Because you can see there are 12 of them. Sometimes there's a 13th. What's that called? Adar Sheni, and the second Adar, right? And when is the festival of Purim? Festival of Purim.
But we're still busy with the test.
You're still busy? Oh, time's up.
Oh, time's up.
Time's up. Now we're taking it up. Sorry. You didn't come early enough. You would have been able to finish. So when's Purim? The date of Purim, the Hebrew date, is Hebrew calendar. No January, February. They were like sorts of Greek gods and all kinds of Roman stuff like that. We're Jewish here. We stick to Babylonian gods. Seriously, these names of these months, they're not so Jewish. The names of Babylonian gods, some of them. Tammuz, of course, yeah. Sivan, also. This is Babylonian gods. Why do we have Babylonian gods as the name of our months?
Because we were in Bavel.
We were in Bavel, so who cares? Why would, so what?
Like if you, I think I see. Like,
why would the Jews choose to use Babylonian names for the months? It's the Hebrew months. It's not the Babylonian months. They have a different system. I don't know exactly what their system of the calendar was.
Because it's like when you assimilation.
No, it's not just because of assimilation. We wouldn't celebrate that and continue with that for so many years, if that was it.
It's the same with the angels, right?
What do you mean, the angels?
The names of the angels about
No, I don't know. Where do you find names of angels? There's not so many names of angels. Maybe Daniel speaks about an angel or two. But the names of the angels are much later. So Michael, Gabriel, those are not the Babylonian names. That's Jewish. Michael, Gabriel. I don't know. What names of the angels were you referring to?
I was thinking Gabriel, Raphael.
Yeah, you think those are Hebrew words, right? Rapha is the healing, and mi, kamocha is who is like you. So me, Kael, is who's like God, yeah. And Gavriel, Gavura is might, so the might of God. So they have Hebrew cognates, but these are Babylonian. And the reason why, I don't know if you remember this, Yisrael, we learned this before. We'll take it up together in just a minute. That
No, we copied the wrong one. I think it's he read out the wrong.
Okay. Well, good. Now fix it. Perfect. That's why we're here. But we'll do it together. The sages in Babylonia, this was a major center of Jewish learning. This is the Ramban's explanation, Nachmanides, 13th century, 12th century. He described the following. He said, we learn from the Torah. It says in the Torah, what's the first mitzvah in the Torah?
To make the calendar.
That's right, to make the calendar, to declare the first month. What's the natural beginning of the year agriculturally? When does the school year start? September, right? And that's the equivalent of Tishrei. We have Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. What does the Torah tell us? The first mitzvah when we come out of Egypt, just a few weeks ago. To be precise, 5 weeks and 4 days ago. Today's 39 days to the Omer, right? We started counting the Omer the day after we left. So 5 weeks and 4 days ago, the Torah says this is really the beginning of Jewish time. Because the Jewish nation was created. And the first mitzvah in the Torah is, God tells the Jewish people, this month should be the first month for you. That's why the list starts, number 1 is at Nisan. Even though really the beginning of the year is in Tishrei, number 7. There's 2 halves of the year, you could say, 6 months and 6 months. The natural beginning of the month is why we start, the agricultural cycle starts. Before the winter, we plant, we pray for the rain, and we hunker down. And then all the blossoming comes in the second half of the year from 1 through 6. But the Torah says we have to change the system and mark in the calendar the Exodus, the redemption from Egypt. How are we going to mark it? By declaring that the first month of the year, even though the beginning of the year is in month 7, according to this. We count Nisan as the first month of the year. So the sages in Babylonia took this idea. This is what the Ramban explains. And he says, well, if that was true about the first redemption, maybe we should make it the same for the second redemption. Second redemption is when the Jews left Babylon. They said, we have to mark this redemption. We're going to build the second temple now. And this is redeeming the Jews after the exile. 70 years. It wasn't 400 or 210 or anything like that. It was 70 years. But God said, you're going to be exiled because of your sins, and I'm going to bring you back into the land. And he did. And we built the second temple. It wasn't quite as grand as the first, but in some ways, at the end, it became even grander. The point is, the Ramban explains, the sages wanted to mark in the calendar the redemption. How did they do that? They said, well, we already have our Jewish months. We have a cycle of 12 months of the year, and there's biblical names that are not on this page. But basically, the Torah uses the numbers. They say month number 1, month number 2, month number 3. What month are we in now? Month 1, ER, which is month number 2. That's what the Torah says, the beginning of the second month. It's this week's Parsha. Right? Parsha Bamidbar. This is the beginning of the second month of the second year when they came out of Egypt. Second month, meaning it's ER. So they decided we want to mark our redemption somehow. In the calendar, how do they do that? We're going to use the names that we attach to them. Babylonian names. Strange? A little strange. Way to commemorate a redemption by using the Babylonian gods. But in some ways, it does make an argument that we're noticing that we are leaving Babylon, coming out of Babylon. And then, of course, the names get reinterpreted and we have meanings for them. For example, I'll give you, it's just to make it easy to remember. I like to use mnemonic devices. Soon I'm going to teach you a song. But Nisan has the word Nes in it. What does Nes mean? Miracle. So it's easy to remember. What's the miracle that's commemorated in Nisan? Pesach, Yetziat Mitzrayim, absolutely. So it's easy to remember. Nisan, so the Nes, where's commemorated? ER, I just learned this last night. Someone said the Hebrew word ER is made up of Aleph, Yud, Resh. Aleph Yud stands for Eretz Yisrael. And Yud Resh stands for Yom Yerushalayim. So we have the holiday in ER of Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. Very nice. So Nisan, ER, Sivan. What does it have to do with Shavuot? I don't know. Sivan. We have to make something up. We have to filter all of culture through the sieve of Torah. Maybe. I don't know. Just being creative. Anyways, what's the song? You ready to sing with me? You ready, Michael, are you? Yes? Hananel, you ready? You're a singer. You guys don't know, but Hananel is a YouTube hit sensation. Sing for us. You ready? Do you have the 12 names in front of you? Are you ready to sing with me? Okay, afterwards you're going to sing a solo. We'll do it all together first, and then we'll do a solo, okay? Dimitri, you ready?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know the names?
No.
Now you're going to know them, okay? Goes like this. You ready, Benjamin? Number 1. Yeah. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar. Really, we should do some harmonies. Come on. You got it?
Yeah.
You got it one more time. Gabriel, lead us. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet Shvat Adar. Okay, now you know them all. Just keep singing it over and over in your head all day long, and you'll have it by tomorrow. It's a little ditty that I think I learned it in grade 2, maybe grade 3.
Is this on YouTube?
It is now. We're on YouTube Live, so you can.
So which part of us is live? I mean, this side or you?
Is which?
The camera.
Camera, it means
Yeah, just me. Yeah. Are you worried? You don't want to be on camera?
Well, I'm comfortably,
Yes.
completely comfortable being shown to the entire world. That's fine.
Okay. Then we'll switch around the camera. Okay, do it again. Let's go. Okay, now you guys. Okay, ready? Nisan Iyar Sivan Tammuz Av Elul Tishrei Cheshvan Kislev Tevet Shvat Adar. Okay, nice group. We have a mixture of beards, no beards. We've got white hair. We got black hair. We got red hair. We got every country in the world, I think.
Like really, red hair?
What's that?
You said red hair?
Yeah, sort of. You got some red, Gingy. Yeah, a little bit.
Wow. Okay, sure. I didn't notice.
Okay, so now what's not on this page that I made up, I just made it up a little bit easier so that you could write down next to each holiday what number is the date within the month. So in the month of Nisan, there's one holiday, and this is the English name. It's called Passover. But could have written Pesach. I don't know. It's a translation. What are the dates of Pesach? Hananel. 15 to 21. Very good. 7 days. Benjamin, you got that? 15 to 21?
Yes, I did.
Perfect. Great. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes. I have a pencil here. Sure. Okay. Okay, Iyar. Yom Ha'atzmaut. What day is Yom Ha'atzmaut? The 5th day of Iyar. It's interesting, in most years, it doesn't fall on the 5th of Iyar. That's its date, officially. Why does it get moved? Keeps getting pushed around. Yom Ha'atzmaut gets pushed around. And the rabbis are happy about it. The rabbis even encourage pushing it off its normal date. Every other Jewish holiday, it has its date. You can't play around with Pesach. It's always the 15th of Nisan. What's the difference between Pesach and Yom Ha'atzmaut? Oh, good. I would not call it a secular holiday. I would call it a Jewish holiday. But, yeah, absolutely. We have to celebrate that Hashem gave us the ability to create a Jewish state after 2,000 years. It's a Jewish celebration. When I say Hallel, I say Jewish rituals are done. It's true, it's also a national holiday. And of course, the major difference is that the Pesach is written in the Torah. Yom Ha'atzmaut is not written in the Torah. So we can't play around with the date of Pesach. It's written in the Torah. But Yom Ha'atzmaut is not written in the Torah. It's what we usually call it, the differences between a biblical holiday and rabbinic holiday. At the biblical level, we learn a lot that there's halacha is based on various tiers, levels of obligation. Biblical level is the highest. And we have less flexibility with playing around with that. But a rabbinic holiday, some that the rabbis declared, we're going to see there's a few of them, that is more flexible. And the rabbis knew that they're not, even when they institute new additions, they never claim to be on the same level as a biblical obligation, but rabbinically, they can create obligations. And I believe the rabbis have created an obligation to mark the day of Yom Ha'atzmaut as a celebration of our third redemption, if you will. We talked about it. That's why some people actually, they try to put it into their calendar. Say, this year is year 5783. That's the Jewish count. Or 2023. But they also say this year is the year 75 years to the establishment of the State of Israel. I've seen that in some wedding invitations. People write 75 years to the establishment of Israel.
55 years of Machon Meir.
That's yeah, we should put that in the calendar too. Okay, like it. All right, very good. So Yom Ha'atzmaut is on the 5th of Iyar. Why does it usually get pushed off? Because of Shabbat, as Stephen said. We don't want the celebrations of this, as Shmuel said. It's also a civic holiday, and therefore there's lots of governmental ceremonies and celebrations which involve using electronics and gunpowder and all sorts of stuff like that. So we don't want those to impinge upon the Shabbat. Rabbinic holidays do not override the Shabbat. And so whenever it gets too close to Shabbat, either before it or afterwards, they push it off. The Yom Ha'atzmaut is always going to fall out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Never on a Sunday or Monday, and never on a Thursday or Friday, because Yom Ha'atzmaut is not just one day, there's also the day before Yom Ha'atzmaut. It's not on your page, but it should be there. Next page we'll have an addition. Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron is the memorial day for the soldiers. It's always the day before Yom Ha'atzmaut. And therefore its date would be the 4th of Iyar. But again, the 4th and the 5th of Iyar, they get switched around based on the year to make sure that we don't violate the Shabbat. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Michael Aryeh, when is Pesach Sheni?
Pesach Sheni is on the 15th of.
Why? What is Pesach Sheni?
Pesach Sheni is like the second chance if you miss the first one, so it's like 1 month later. So.
A month later, exactly. The Pesach, well, the first Pesach was the 15th, and Pesach Sheni is the a month later. You get a second chance. Almost correct. L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvarav.
Amen.
Amen.
To explain it precisely, I would say that maybe in Nisan we weren't as precise as we should be.
Okay.
It's true. Pesach is from the 15th to the 21st. That's the festival. The Torah would call that festival Chag HaMatzot, the festival of matzah, for 7 days, 15th to the 21st, 7 days, right? However, there was an additional day when there was a temple. There was a day which was a half holiday, because that was the day on which everybody would bring the Pesach sacrifice. See, at the beginning of the 15th, that's at the night of the 15th, that's the night of the Seder. What do we eat at the Seder? What do we eat at the Seder? What do we eat at the Seder? What do you eat at the Seder? Maror, matzah, 4 cups of wine, right? We're missing out the main course. In the day, the main course at the Seder night was the lamb of the Pesach sacrifice. That means, when was the Pesach sacrifice slaughtered? On the 14th. 14th in the afternoon. And so the 14th in the afternoon, that, if we want to be careful to separate between those two holidays, it's a Pesach, Chag Korban Pesach, really is one day, the 14th of Nisan. And then Chag HaMatzot, but we continue to celebrate for 7 days with the matzah, is from the 15th to the 21st. But we're not precise about it because we have no Pesach sacrifice. So we call the week-long festival from the 15th to 21st, we call it Chag HaPesach. But there is an extra day, the 14th of Nisan, which is when the original Pesach sacrifice was brought in the temple. And so if we want to get a second chance, it says in the Torah, coming up soon actually, in the Torah, to a theater near you. The story is told that the Jewish people, in the second year, now we said this parsha starts to speak in the second year, in the second month, so it's coming up very soon. There are some Jewish people who, they made a Pesach for the first time after leaving. They made a Pesach in the second year after leaving. And some people couldn't make it. They were not pure. To bring sacrifices, to go to the temple, you have to be pure. Ritually, pure and impure, we don't have those concepts nowadays. But we don't practice them because we don't have a temple. But in those days, sacrifices, they knew that they had to be pure and they were impure. And so they came to complain to Moshe. Torah tells us, they said, why should we be left out? It's not our fault. We did what we could. And Moshe checks with God. God tells him, all right, This is the holiday of the second chances. In the 14th of Iyar, precisely a month after the 14th of Nisan, there's an opportunity to bring a Pesach for those who didn't bring it on the first month. They bring it in the second month. So Pesach Sheni is the 14th of Iyar. Did you notice that? Good,
I
good.
was told that it should be 14 of ER. So.
That is correct. That is correct. Pesach Sheni is the 14th of Iyar because it's exactly a month after the 14th of Nisan. But we don't have that on our calendar because we don't have it. We don't have a sacrifice now. Pesach Sheni is not much of a festival, anyways. Even nowadays, we don't do anything except for not say Tachanun. All right, but it is another day to mark in the month of Iyar, and someone had a question here.
Yeah, but for the second this Pesach Sheni, we celebrate this Pesach Sheni with matzah.
Some people do. Some people eat matzah. It's a Hasidic custom. It's not an obligation. You don't have to eat matzah, and you don't have to do anything really. There's no mitzvot of that. It's a commemoration of this ancient day, and so some people mark it by eating matzah. And you have chametz. You can have chametz. There's no problem with chametz. It's not. Yeah, Gabriel.
No, in the past there were some holidays we now don't celebrate.
Yeah. I'll explain a little bit that the truth is there's a lot. We have a book, one of the most ancient books of the entire Jewish corpus, is a book called Megillat Ta'anit. It's a list of fast days. It's actually not a list of fast days. It's days in which you're not allowed to fast. And this list is, what does that mean, a day you're not allowed to fast? That's a holiday, that's a festival, that's what we do. All the holidays you're not allowed to fast. So there were many, many holidays there. And what happened was, this comes from the Second Temple period. The Second Temple period, we sort of hinted to it before, it wasn't as grand as the First Temple. It took them quite a while to build the Second Temple. So don't be depressed if we don't have the temple yet, a third temple. Right? We've only been here for 75 years. It took a while for them to build the Second Temple too. Second Temple, each time they made a significant advance towards building the Second Temple, the people celebrated a holiday. Okay, today we managed to put up the central doors. Let's have a festival, no fasting. And today we enclosed the outer perimeter, and they celebrated a day of celebration. It's all different sections. We have the book. You can read it. It's one of the most ancient texts we have. Anyways, there are many, many days there, which once the Second Temple was completed and once it was eventually destroyed, we don't celebrate those days anymore, except for Megillat Ta'anit mentions Purim. Purim is really the only one that we celebrate. Maybe there's one more. I remember if there's any more in there that we still keep today. No, it's not in there. It's not in there. It's a later, very much later, after the Talmud, in the medieval times. It's the first mention of Lag BaOmer. We talked about that. In general, the period between Pesach and Shavuot, of course, was dedicated to commemorating the students of Rabbi Kiva that died, but that Lag BaOmer itself has any specified unique character, that's a later addition to our Jewish tradition. Okay, who had a question? Yosef, you.
I just wanted to ask for the third temple. Let's say the third temple has been rebuilt, B'ezrat Hashem. Will there be any holiday of fast day, like 9th of Av?
It's a very good question. What's curious is that in that Megillat Ta'anit, one of the days mentioned, also in the Mishnah. Mishnah came not long after. And the Mishnah records that there were certain days that there were messengers sent out from Jerusalem to tell everybody the calendar. Because this calendar, we have it set now, but it used to be dependent on eyewitness testimony. People would see the new moon and they'd come and they'd have to give testimony in the Jewish court in Jerusalem. And then the high court would declare, okay, this is the new month. And they'd set the calendar that way. To this day, by the way, they do this in the Muslim countries. A friend of mine came back from, I think it was Saudi Arabia, I can't remember now, many, many years ago. And he was a doctor, went for some conference. And he brought me back the newspaper. On the front of the newspaper, there was a call for whoever sees the new moon, come to the Beit Din, the Muslim Beit Din. And so they're still doing that today, somewhat, some version of that. But we already moved to a set calendar from the 7th century or 8th century. So it's been quite a while. In any case, your question was about the third temple.
Yeah. Would there be any would there be any fast for 9 of Av?
So I was saying that we find in the Mishnah, even after the temple was built, they sent out these messengers from Jerusalem to tell everybody what the calendar is like. Not every month of the year. Not all 12 months. They sent out only for the months in which there was a significant day that everybody had to know which day. Like for Pesach, of course, they had to know. So for Nisan, they sent out the messengers. We declared the 1st of Nisan, and therefore they know the 15th of Nisan is going to be Pesach, right? They also sent out messengers for Av. Av, the only holiday in Av is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is a fast day. Wait a minute, the temple's built. There's a tradition, historical tradition, and it seems almost universally accepted that they fasted Tisha B'Av even during the Second Temple period. Very strange. Why would you be fasting? The 9th of Av is the day the temple was destroyed. Why fast? Now the temple's rebuilt. So nowadays, in hindsight, we can say that throughout our history, the 9th of Av, other calamities befell the Jewish people on that day as well. According to our sages, even in the times of the biblical times, there was a tragedy that happened on the 9th of Av. The decree that we had to wander in the desert for 40 years because of the sin of the spies, according to tradition, that happened on Tisha B'Av. Because the 9th of Av is a day which might retain some character of national mourning, even when the third temple is built. I don't know. Ask the rabbis at the time. Maybe Mashiach will be around and he'll be able to tell us the answer to that one. But there is a precedent for the fast of Tisha B'Av, only Tisha B'Av, not at the end of, we have 4 fasts for the destruction, only one. Tisha B'Av is the strongest, really the only 24-hour fast that we have of the fast days. And that, there's a chance we might still be commemorating on the 9th of Av, even after the third temple is built. It's an interesting question. Okay. Lag BaOmer, which day?
The 18th.
18. Yom Yerushalayim? 28th of Iyar. Coming up this Friday. Today is how many days of Iyar?
The 39th. No.
Iyar. We'll figure it out. If Friday is Kafchet,
Kaf Dalet.
so today must be Kaf Daled, right? Monday. 6 days to go. Very good. Okay. Shavuot?
6th of Sivan.
6th of Sivan. As we said yesterday, we saw it inside. We talked about it at greater length. That's the current system where we have a set calendar. But in the day when there was variability based on when they saw the new moon, we didn't talk about it at length now, but maybe in a previous time. How long does it take for the lunar cycle, for a month to be completed?
29 days, so 30 days.
29 now.
Exactly, it's 29 and a half. And so if we did 29 every month, we'd be off half a day every month. Within the course of 6 months, we might be off by 3 days. And within a year, we might be off by 6 days. Every year, you'll be off by a week, almost. So the system is built on that there's some days that are some months that are 29 days, months, and some months that are 30-day months. And also the 29 and a half, we managed to stay on course with the moon. And some months, when they want to make the month 30 days long, we recognize it until today, because they say that there's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. The 30th day of the previous month has an element of being part of the new month celebrations, even though it's the 30th of the previous month. And then the first day of the next month, of course, is celebrated as Rosh Chodesh. That's one thing. The next version of this chart will have, and that it will be Rosh Chodesh. The answers will be easy. When is Rosh Chodesh? It's on the first of every month, right? Although every second month, approximately, there's also a celebration of Rosh Chodesh on the 30th of the previous month. It's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. We celebrate the transition with the 30th to the 1st. So when in the day, this is what we explained yesterday, that in the day when they actually made the months based on the eyewitnesses, it could be that the month of Nisan had 30 days. And it could be that the month of Iyar had 30 days. So that means that the festival of Shavuot is not always going to be on the 6th of Iyar. It could be the 5th, it could be the 7th. Depends on how long the months of Nisan and Iyar were made. Because we're counting from the finishing of the 15th, we start counting on the 16th of Nisan, 49 days. Whenever that 49 day counts, the 50th day is Shavuot. That was the original system. And so depending on those 2 months, if they're complete, they're called a complete month, that's a month of 30 days, or they're an incomplete month, that's a month of 29 days. The festival of Shavuot could, in the day, be on the 5th of Sivan, the 6th of Sivan, or the 7th of Sivan. The Torah doesn't say a date. It's the only holiday which the Torah doesn't say a specific date. It says the 50th day, after you count for 7 weeks. Count for 7 weeks, then celebrate the festival of weeks. Shavuot means weeks, festival of weeks. So nowadays, it has a set date. The 6th of Sivan is Shavuot. Okay, because the way we set the calendar, we arranged it that it's always going to be, I think one of the months is Maleh and one is Chaser. But it always turns out that Shavuot is on the 6th of Sivan. So far, so good?
Yeah.
How many days the months have now?
Some months have 29 and some months have 30. There's a system of alternating months. It's not precisely alternating. Sometimes there's a few in a row that are full, and not every year is it the same, because amazing. It's been 1,300 years since the 7th century. This system has been working and keeping us on track, pretty much on track. We have to make sure that the lunar cycle matches the solar cycle, as well as just the months being, 29 and a half days, and so you have to, take care of that half day. Other than that, we also have to make up. There's a difference between how long is the solar year? How many days? 365 days. And how much is 12 times 29 and a half? 354. I think it's 354. 354. So every year you've got to make up 11 days. From 365 to 354. 11 days. So those 11 days, they add up every year. So every 3 years or so, you've got to add a month to catch up. So there's a complicated system. How it works according to it's amazing. 1,300 years ago, Hillel, not the famous Hillel, his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, 7 times later, he's also named after his grandfather, Hillel. He's known as Hillel the President, because he was there was an official title called Nasi. Famously, who was called the Nasi? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Hillel was his grandson. Hillel Nasiya. The Hillel that I'm talking about now, who set the calendar. Hillel, the Nasi, the Nasiya is just the Aramaic for Hanasi. Hillel Hanasi. He set the calendar for 1,300 years. Amazing. He set up a 19-year cycle. There's 7 leap years, which have an extra month, within a 19-year cycle. So it's approximately every 3 years, but not precisely. Okay, enough. That's for another time. It's quite complicated how that works. If anybody likes some complicated engineering calculations, you can study the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh of the Rambam, how they understood in the ancient world the solar system and how we calculate. But it's amazing, the system works until today. So there are some leap years, but that's to make that work. Okay, because that way the holidays are always in the proper season. Pesach is always in the spring, right? And Sukkot's always in the fall, as they should be, as the Torah says they must, and that's why we learned that we have this calculation, right? The Christians use the solar system, and the Muslims use the lunar system only, and only Jewish people have this combination of the two systems working together. Let's continue. We were talking about Shavuot. One more thing we mentioned. Who remembers from this is already from a week or two ago? What's special about the day after the holidays? What's it called? The day after the holidays. The day after Pesach, the day after Sukkot, and the day after Shavuot. It's a special name for it. In Hebrew, it means to tie on the Chag. You're tying something onto the Chag, the holiday. No, that's the intermediate days of the festival. That's inside the Chag. 7 days inside. The first day and the 7th day are holy. In the middle, the days are called the intermediate days, Chol HaMoed. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about after, right? So if we're talking about when is Pesach, 15 to 21, right, of Nisan? Day 22 of Nisan. What's special about it? It has a special name. Good. The Moroccans have a custom to make a festival on that day.
But you mean not the event that happened historically?
There is a name for the day after the festival. It's so well known in Israeli society because the teachers' union decided that there's a day after. The day after Pesach is a day off also.
Shabbat.
Not Shabbat. Isru Chag. Isru is le'asor, means to tie on in Aramaic. Isru Chag, we tie on an extra day to the festival. Isru Chag is the day after the festival. So if Pesach is 15 to 21, day 22 is Isru Chag.
Isru the Aleph.
Isru
Aleph or Ein?
with an aleph, le'asor. Yeah. To tie on like a asirim in modern Hebrew. An asir is somebody who's tied up. He's in jail. Asir is somebody jailed, prisoner. So Isru is to tie on to the holiday. It's tied on to the holiday, the day after. So Shavuot is which day of the Sivan?
6.
Right, the 6th of Sivan. So when's Isru Chag? The 7th of Sivan. It's Isru Chag. What's special about that day? All the festivals. What's special about the day after the festival? The festival's over. It's a little bit festive. We don't say Tachanun. Tachanun is a part of the prayer service where it's called supplications. We ask Hashem for forgiveness and we pray for all of our needs. We don't do that when there's a festive day. So Pesach Sheni, that's pretty much all we do, is we don't say this sort of more morose or more sad prayer. It's too festive for that. So too, the 7th of Sivan, we don't say Tachnun. Why? Why is the day after the holidays special? Why is there still some festive elements the day after the holidays? So it goes back to the temple. Gabriel, we talked about this. I don't know if you were here that day. Maybe it was the day you missed. You were going to all sorts of lawyers and stuff like that, right? The day after the festival, in the temple, there was a lot of sacrifices brought on the festivals. And not everybody managed to finish bringing all the sacrifices on those 7 days. And so the day after, was the rabbis allowed to complete the sacrifices from the holiday. And so it still had some festivity to it, because some of the people were still bringing sacrifices a day later. So that's the source of Isru Chag. The day after, because you were still bringing some of the sacrifices. Why am I telling you this at such great length? Because Shavuot is the only holiday. What are the 3 biblical holidays? I know it's not really stressed in this chart. We have to stress them, right? What are the 3 biblical holidays? Yeah, but there's 3 that are called Shalosh Regalim, where you go up to Jerusalem. You don't have, on Rosh Hashanah, you don't have to go up to Jerusalem. You see this? Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Those are the 3 festivals that you would come to Jerusalem and bring all your sacrifices. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, right? So Pesach, how many days? 7 days. Most people could get their sacrifices in. They gave 1 day extra. Sukkot, how many days?
8 days.
7 plus 1. There was an 8th day added on. The Torah says the Shmini Atzeret, 8th day. And then, after the 8 days of Sukkot, there's Isru Chag, 1 extra day. Shavuot is the only one of the 3 which, how many days is Shavuot?
Only 1 day.
Only 1 day. Only 1 day. And therefore, how many people could bring their sacrifices on that 1 day? If all the Jewish people are coming to Jerusalem. Not so many. You need at least 7 days. Maybe even 8 days. So the rabbis allowed, not just 1 day after Shavuot is called Isru Chag. Only 1 day is called Isru Chag. But for an additional 6 days after Shavuot, people were bringing their sacrifices in Jerusalem. And so for 6 days following Shavuot, we don't say Tachanun. It's like an extended Isru Chag. So beware. After Shavuot, for 6 days, we will not be saying Tachanun. You'll be scratching your heads. Why? Shavuot's over. Okay, Isru Chag. But that's only 1 day. No, after Shavuot, you get 6 days where we don't say Tachanun. After the 6th of Sivan. So you could say the 7th, the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. I think by the 13th, we go back to saying Tachanun. Okay, that's a heads up about after Shavuot.
After
Yeah.
Shavuot, we count 6 days before saying Tachanun.
Correct. Ready? From the top. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Ad. One more time. Nisan,
Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev,
Tevet, Shvat, Ad. Okay, very good. Let's run through the list. Of course, the 17th of Tammuz. Which day is that in Tammuz? That we have a fast day? No. That's not in here. Fast of Gedalia is not in here. You could add it in. When we get there in a minute. 17th of Tammuz is a fast day to one of the days. There's 4 days here for the destruction of the temple. 17th of Tammuz. The 9th of Av. The names include the date. The other ones, the 10th of Tevet, you can see is a fast day. And in month 10, the 10th of the 10th month. You see that? Tevet 10 is a fast day. And what's the 4th fast day? For the destruction. No, Tanit Esther is not for the destruction. It's not on the chart. We have to change the chart and add it in. The day after Rosh Hashanah is the fast of Gedalia. It's on Gimel, the 3rd of Tishrei. The 3rd of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah is 1 and 2 of Tishrei. Torah says it explicitly. But the sages, after the first temple was destroyed, the remnants of the Jewish people in Judea tried to have some form of government until Gedaliah, who was the leader at the time, was assassinated
So, Rabbi,
by his fellow Jews. And that was really the nail in the coffin, as they say, of the Judean independence in the First Temple era. And the sages declared a fast day, sort of like a continuation of the 9th of Av. A month and a half later, there was the fast of Gedaliah when he was assassinated. And that's also the 4 fast days for the destruction of the temple. The 5th day, the fast of Esther in Adar, is not connected with the destruction. It's a very different nature of a fast day. It's sort of like a happy fast day. We'll talk about it when we get to Purim. You had a question?
once again, the fast of Gedaliah, the date of
3rd of Tishrei. 3rd of Tishrei, the fast of Gedaliah.
What's the second fast day?
Well, on our chart, if we start with month 1, no fast day, 2, 3. The first fast day is in the 4th month. There's a fast day in the 5th month, and then there's a fast day in the 7th month. And then there's a fast of the 10th month. As a matter of fact, if you look in the book of Zechariah, they came to the prophet, the people in Babylon, and they said to him in the Second Temple era, right? Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the 3 last prophets, and they said, this was the time where they're already rebuilding the Second Temple. And they asked him, what do we do on the fast days? Pretty much like Yosef asked, do we still have to fast then? We're rebuilding the Second Temple. And you know what they call these fast days? The fast of the 4th, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th. Do we have to fast them? Right? They call the names of the months by the number. What's the fast of the 4th?
David?
The fast of the 4th.
The 4th month.
The-
Tammuz.
The 17th of Tammuz. What's the fast of the 5th? 9th of Av. What's the fast of the 7th?
Gedaliah.
It's the one that's not written on your chart. The 3rd of Tishrei is the fast of Gedaliah. And what's the fast of the 10th? The 10th of Tevet. Sarabet Tevet. Do we have to fast them? And you know what the prophet answered them? It was unclear. From here, we learn, if you want to have a halachic question, don't ask the prophet, ask the rabbi. He gave him a long prophecy all about redemption and exile, but it wasn't clear exactly, do they have to fast or not? And we mentioned that there's a tradition that they did fast Tisha B'Av, but not the other fasts. And the sages discussed what exactly Zechariah was teaching them in his answer about the redemption. Basically, he was telling them that you have to, it's up to you. It's up to you to decide. Oral law, the rabbis get the choice to decide. These are all from the oral law. None of these are written in the Torah, right? These are all the rabbinic tradition. Rabbis decide based on the situation. If there's a time of peace, if there's a time of war, if there's the destruction, or if there's rebuilding. What are we in today? Are we in a time of redemption or a time of destruction?
Oh, redemption, of course.
Mm.
Don't you think it is nice time?
It is nice, but I wouldn't say that we have a 3rd temple. I think there's still war in the world. I haven't seen Mashiach. Have you?
There will be always war in the world. You cannot stop it unless you move the war somewhere else. That's why we need temple.
Okay, but in the time of the temple, maybe in the time of Mashiach, there'll be no more war.
Because we will move it.
What does it
somewhere
say? What it says is that the lion will lie with the lamb. It's an imprecise translation. The actual text is that the wolf will lie with the lamb. Wolf eats lambs usually. The Rambam says, doesn't mean that there's going to be a change in the nature of the wolves. Wolves will still want to eat lambs. So what does it mean then? The wolf will lie with the lamb. It means that Russia will be able to live with Ukraine and not attack them. It means that there's going to be peace on earth. It's nothing to do with the wolves and the lambs. It's about human history is going to change. That's his interpretation. Other people say, the Ravid critique of the Rambam, he says, maybe we can take the words literally too. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be a miracle. And the nature of this world will change. According to the Rambam, it's clear, it's a metaphor. The point is that maybe with Mashiach times, that'll be peace on earth. So today, we have a great, great standard of living. We have so much miracles coming back to the land of Israel. We don't make light of that. Here it is in the calendar, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom Yerushalayim. In a few days, we're going to be celebrating the fact that we returned to Jerusalem. We reunited the city in 1967. But still, where's the majority of the Jewish people? In Galut. They're not here. They're not here. Still, soon, we're about 50-50. It's about 50-50. But I can't say we've reached the end of the redemptive period, so there is a debate. Some rabbis, after the 1948, they said, let's cancel all the fast days. We're in a period of redemption. And they went back to this discussion, back in the book of Zechariah, and the temple discusses it, and they say, well, it depends on the time period, on the historical occurrences. If it's a time of war, a time of peace, maybe there was a lot of euphoria. They thought, maybe we won't have to fast anymore these fast days. The common consensus is, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, and we fast the fast days. Because we're sort of in a gray area in between. We have some elements, a lot of elements of redemption, but we haven't reached the end of the redemption yet. And so the common custom is, yes, we do fast, and our rabbis teach us that not so fast can we. Also, I think a problem is we don't have a centralized authority. What's the centralized authority called in Judaism? We have a great high court. Sanhedrin. It's a Greek word for the high court. It comes from the Second Temple period when there was Greek influence. It's called the Sanhedrin. We don't have a Sanhedrin, so one rabbi will say no more fasting because the other rabbi will say, we're going to fast. So it's very hard to get anything together. Even Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim, you know that not everybody celebrates. Not everybody has a barbecue and waves a flag on the 5th of Iyar. Okay, let's finish it up. Rosh Hashanah. Elul doesn't really have a festival, but the entire month has a unique character. We're preparing for the high holidays. What do the Sfardim say every single day of Elul? Slichot, exactly. Ashkenazim, what do they do every day on Elul?
Shofar.
They blow the shofar. They blow the shofar every day of Elul. Preparation. Tishrei, we have, of course, in the Torah, day 1 and 2 is Rosh Hashanah. What day is Yom Kippur, Yisrael? What day of Tishrei is Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur. We're talking about Tishrei. 10. Day 10 of Tishrei, correct. And Binyamin, what day is Yom Kippur? 10th of? Tishrei, exactly. 10th of Tishrei. Okay. And Sukkot, Yosef, when is Sukkot?
After Yom Kippur, but I'm not sure.
After Yom Kippur, but you're not sure. So that's why we're covering this in the class. Now you're going to know. 15th. Makes sense. Just like Pesach is on the 15th of Nisan. What's special about the 15th of the month? It's the middle. And what's significant about the middle of the month? What decides a month? The moon. So the 15th, full moon. Right? First of the month is when the moon is tiny. It starts to grow and grow and grow and grow till the fifth, it's 14 and a half. The 15th, the moon is full. It's called waxing of the moon. And then the rest of the month, the moon gets smaller and smaller and smaller. For our eyes, the moon stays the same. But we see it as getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's called waning, waxing and waning, the English words, for the month, the moon getting bigger and smaller until it disappears. And then month ends. And then we see the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, right? New beginning of the next month. So the 15th is the prime time, especially in an age when there was no electricity, for having a festival, for celebrating in the evening, when you have lots of light. So the 15th of Tishrei is Sukkot, just like the 15th of Nisan is Pesach. And how long does Sukkot go? 7 days plus 1. I should add on Sukkot plus Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret is day 22. And then there's Isru Chag on day 23. Right? Got that? I'll fix it up for you, give you an updated calendar tomorrow. For your test. Your test tomorrow will include all the elements we mentioned today, but you'll have to fill in the dates, okay? So what's going to be Shmini Atzeret, which day? 22. And Isru Chag? Isru Chag is 23. Should I add in the Isru Chags? To the calendar? Let's just make it complicated. Isru Chag is the day after. It's not really a holiday. It's a day we don't say Tachnun. Okay, next. Cheshvan? No holidays. Kislev? Chanukah? And what date of Kislev is Chanukah?
23.
We have it here yesterday. Chanukah, Chanu, Kafhei. They rested on the 25th. Kafhei is 25. Chanu Kafhei. Starts on the 25th of Kislev and it goes for 8 days, so that takes us over into the 3rd of Tevet. Next, Tevet, 10th of Tevet, the 10th of the 10th. It's a fast day, one of the 4 fast days to commemorate the destruction and to remind us to do tshuva so that we can rebuild the temples. And Shvat, this is not much of a holiday. Guess which calendar date for this semi-holiday of Tu B'Shvat? 15, the middle of the month, 15. 2 is how we write. Let's do this properly. Why do we call it Tu B'Shvat? You have to know your numbers.
9 and 6.
9 and 6 is 15, exactly. That's right. Why don't we just say number 1 is Aleph, right? Number 2, Bet. Gimel, 3. Help me out. Daled. Hey is?
5.
Yeah.
5. 6.
6.
Zion 7.
7.
Chet.
Chet.
8.
8.
Tet 9.
Tet 9.
And Yud 10.
Yud 10. Very good. How do we say 11?
Yud Aleph.
Yud Aleph. It's very simple. Yud is 10. And we take the Aleph from here. We added it to 1. 10 plus 1 is Yud Aleph, right? Got that? How do we say 12? Yud Bet. How do we say 13? Yud Gimel. You get the hang of it?
Yes.
And how do we say 14? So just when you got the hang of it, we mess it up. How do you say 15? Why don't we say Yud Hey? Yud is 10, and the 5 is Hey. Why don't we say Yud Hey? It's the name of God. We don't want to take the name of God in vain. So the tradition is, instead of making a 10 plus 5, we do the math. 9 plus 6. 9 plus 6. So we use what's the letter for 9? Tet. Right? Tet. We use the letter for 9. And then what's the letter for 6?
Vav.
Tet, Vav. Okay, I made a mess of this. Tet, Vav. And what about the name of God? Is Yud, K, Vav, K. All three of these letters, Yud, K, and Vav. I say K instead of Hey, just to be careful. But we don't want to say Yud, Vav either, because there's 2 out of the 3 names, letters of the name of God. So for 16, we continue the same system. And what do we write? Tet, Zayin. 9 plus 7 equals 16. And then, once we get to 17, so there's no problem with saying Yud Zayin. So we have Tet Zayin and Yud Zayin. And 17, and then we go back. What's 18? Yud Chet. Right? When's Lag BaOmer? Yud Chet. And then Yud Tet is what? 19. And then how do we say 20? Kaf. Right? Al Bet Gimel Dal Hey Vav Zayin Yud. Kaf is 20. And then we go to 30. Lamed. How do we say 40? Mem. And so on and so forth. Okay? So, Tet Vav, Tu Bishvat, the name, it's named after the date. Tu stands for Tet Vav. Simple, right? Fast of Esther, what day? 13th of Adar. Purim. On. When's Purim? Which is it? The 14th or the 15th? Make up your mind. Both. How could it be both?
14 outside of Jerusalem.
Strange. It's the only holiday where the sages gave 2 different dates, depending on where you are. It's fascinating.
It's 14 or 15.
Correct.
Not both.
Well, if you want to get on a train for a half an hour, travel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, you could have a second day of Purim. If you move to Jerusalem, you're a Jerusalemite. You had a whole day of Purim on the 14th and you want to keep partying, get on the train, come to Jerusalem, you have a whole other day. There's a debate exactly how to work that, but yes, theoretically, you could have 2 days of Purim if you live in both places. Walled cities or unwalled cities. There's a few other cities which are doubtful. Not if they have a walled city today. We calculate by who had a walled city in the time of Yoshua bin Nun. Okay, well done. That was our little test. Shavuot has 5 names. What are the 5 names of Shavuot? We talked about them the other day. So you should know them. The first name is Chag Shavuot. Shavuot. Shavuot means weeks. It's the festival of the weeks. That's what the Torah calls it. What happened after those 7 weeks? Torah says celebrate a festival. But what happened on that festival? Torah doesn't say explicitly, but we know if we follow along. Exactly, we follow along the narrative in the Torah. We know that when they got to the month of Sivan, the 3rd month, it says that they came to a place called Sinai in the beginning of the 3rd month. What's the 3rd month? Sivan. Coming soon to a theater near you. Right? When's Rosh Chodesh Sivan? Sunday, I believe. In a week. Sunday. It's Rosh Chodesh Sivan. That's when they came to Sinai. And then they had to get ready for a couple days, turned into another couple days, At the end of the day, we calculate that there's a debate in the Talmud exactly how it goes, whether Matan Torah was on the 6th of Sivan or on the 7th of Sivan. We celebrate, of course, the 6th. And so we call it Zman. What does Zman mean? The time. Matan, what does Matan mean?
Well,
What's a Matana?
okay.
Giving. Torah. Zman Matan Torah. Okay? This is what it's called in the prayers. It's not actually called that in the Torah. That's why I indented it a little bit. Zman Matan Toratenu. Our. That's what we say in our prayers. It's the time of the giving of our Torah. Zman Matan Toratenu. Next. Yeah, very good. The Torah also calls the same day the holiday of what's Katsir? What does Liktzor mean? Harvest, exactly. Chag HaKatzir. It's the harvest festival. What gets harvested this time of year? The wheat. That's right, the all-important grain which gives us our bread. Most of the world survives on bread made from wheat. Although in southern China, it's noodles. They make noodles out of wheat, right? And in northern China, it's rice. Am I correct? Mostly the north versus the south. A lot more rice in the north of China. Or am I switching, making things up?
Asia generally is rice.
The entire, mostly it's rice.
Mostly it's
Okay, and now noodles. Okay. Anyways, that's also made from wheat. Chag HaKatzir, the festival of the harvest. Chag, all this is Chag. Chag is festival. So there's 4 names. We could call it Chag Shavuot, Chag Zman Matan Torah, Chag HaKatzir. What's the next one? Bikurim. What does Bikurim mean? Also means visiting. That's with a kuf. This is with a chaf. Similar to the word Bechor. What's the Bechor? Firstborn. Here we're not talking about firstborn. We just put a dot in it. So we say Bikurim. But it's actually with a kaf. So Bikurim, the festival of the first fruits, we're supposed to bring to the temple. And of course, the wheat is sort of like a festival of Bikurim, but that's done on a national scale. On a private scale, every person had to bring the first fruits from his fields to the temple. It could have been done from Pesach and on throughout the summer. You could bring, whenever the fruits ripen, you can bring them. And the last one is Atzeret. It's also not in the Torah, so I'm going to put it in a little bit. Atzeret is what the sages call the festival. Yeah. Atzeret means gathering in. It's a place, it's a time when we all gather in. All of our families and communities get together to gather. It's also sort of like a gathering in. We talked about this earlier. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, but sort of like a completion of what? Shavuot is a little bit a completion of. Where else do we find the word Atzeret? There's another holiday called Atzeret. Shemini Atzeret. When is that? It's the 8th day of Sukkot. It's after 7 days of Sukkot. There's an 8th day, which you could say we're gathering in all of the experiences that we had in the previous 7 days in the festival of Sukkot. We're gathering it in. So too here, we're gathering in the 7 weeks from Pesach. Pesach was 1 week, but then we counted the 7 weeks of the Omer. That's another thing that's not on your page. Counting of the Omer. We have Lag Ba'omer, but we don't have counting of the Omer. When does the counting of the Omer start?
22nd.
No.
No, sorry, so
Close.
After Pesach.
What day? What's the date?
16 of Nisan.
16 of Nisan, we start to count the Omer. Correct. And it goes until when?
6th of Sivan.
5th.
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 So you don't count the 5th.
We don't count the 50th, yes. Even though it says there in the Torah, you should count the 50th day, we don't. It's interesting. There's a contradiction of verses. Very interesting. Yeah?
Is that because what the Rav told us that we do it, that Sefer HaOmer now is actually Havanan because...
We don't have the sacrifice. It's a debate. Some people say it's still the right today, but I think most rabbis assume that it's a rabbinic mitzvah because we don't have the actual Omer sacrifice that we're counting from. That sacrifice was brought on the 16th, not the 15th. It was brought on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach. They brought that Omer sacrifice. And then, when we get to Shavuot, as we're going to see now, we're going to talk about that there was a special sacrifice brought on Shavuot, which is parallel to the Omer, which was brought on Pesach. Second day of Pesach, we bring that. An Omer means a measure. A measure of what? A measure of what was the produce that was brought on the second day of Pesach.
Wheat.
Not wheat.
Flour.
Flour comes from wheat. What was wheat we celebrate with on Shavuot, at the end of the 7 weeks. What grain ripens even before, 7 weeks before, is barley. So on Pesach we bring the Omer of the barley as a sacrifice to Hashem. And on Shavuot we bring a sacrifice made from wheat. The first use of the new wheat. Yes?
But I heard the barley was considered in those days animal food. Actually.
Yeah,
It's like a
that's right.
transition from animal food to real bread and real food.
You know why? Because when you take someone who wants to study Torah, he's not yet studied Torah, maybe he hasn't got an education. He's like an animal. Doesn't know how to control his desires. He's not refined his character yet. What is a human being? We eat, we have sex, we drink, we sleep. We're just a very developed animal. But if we don't work on ourselves, we'll stay in that animalistic state. The Torah helps us grow, gives us ethics, gives us values, gives us greater insight using our minds. We receive the Torah, we become like human beings. And so on Pesach, we just came out of Egypt, we were like a baby born. Very animal. What does a baby do? Baby can't think. His brain is still too mushy. Baby eats and sleeps and drinks, cries, makes pee-pee and kaki. That's what we were like. So the appropriate sacrifice was barley. Barley is animal food. We still have to thank Hashem for keeping us alive. We start counting the Omer from that measure of barley. We count all the way up to Shavuot. We bring a sacrifice from wheat, and the wheat which is now turned into chametz. It's the only sacrifice which is chametz. After having matzah on Pesach, very plain, simple bread, not developed, we have a sacrifice brought from wheat flour, which is turned into chametz, and brought on the Shavuot festival. Okay, so that's why it's called Chag HaKatir. Katir is because we're celebrating the harvest of the wheat, and the special sacrifice, the special sacrifice is called 2 breads, Shtei Halechem. Don't get confused with the 2 breads that we have every Shabbat. That's to commemorate the manna fell for the Jewish people in the desert, double portion. So there's an extra special double portion on every Shabbat. On Shavuot, there's a special sacrifice of 2 breads in the temple. We don't have the temple, so we don't bring that sacrifice. but we commemorate it, we speak about it, we talk about it, we think about it. It's called Chag HaKatzir, and we celebrate it by bringing 2 loaves made out of this new wheat, from the new wheat harvest. And that's signifying that we've grown up, or we're supposed to have refined our character from becoming a basic animalistic brute to becoming a refined Torah, virtuous individual and a nation. The nation also, it's a national story. And the nation of Israel came out of Egypt, and the nation of Israel received the Torah, and that elevates us above our animalistic selves. Is that clear? Okay. Let's continue to Chag HaBikurim. Let's open up the books. You have the laws of festivals? Quickly, quickly. We only have a few minutes left. Everybody grab a book. We're studying from the laws of the festivals by Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, the rabbi of Har Bracha.
I saw him, man, last week.
Did you see him?
But I didn't know
What?
it was him. I thought, okay, he's
Yeah, so did you tell him I study your work every day?
I was like, hey,
Yeah.
familiar? But I didn't know what I know him from. And then I checked the Google Notes.
Chapter 13. Chapter 13, please.
Okay. Yes.
219.
We're up to page 224. 224. Gabriel, you read for us, please. Page 224 at the top of the page. Chag HaKatzir.
The names of the festivals reflect the agricultural seasons in which they take place. Thus we read 3 times a year, you shall hold a festival for me, you shall observe the festival of unleavened bread, Pesach, eating unleavened bread for 7 days, I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Aviv.
What's the month called?
Aviv.
Wait, is that on our chart? Right? We're using the Babylonian names of the months. The biblical names of the month, we have something called the month of Aviv. Aviv means spring. But this was a biblical term for the month of Nisan. Or the first month, sometimes it's called, by the numbers. The Torah has only a few names for some of the months, mostly it's numbers. Anyways, at the set time in the month of Aviv, go ahead.
For in it you have worked for me, and one shall appear before me empty-handed. The festival of the harvest, Shavuot, of the first fruits of your work, for what you saw in the field, and the festival of gathering Sukkot at the end of the year. When you gather in the results of your work from the field. Pesach is celebrated in the spring when everything begins growing. Shavuot is celebrated at the completion of the harvest and the beginning of the fruit picking. Sukkot is celebrated when all the year's fruits have been gathered. The natural process that take place in this world reflect the spiritual processes that take place in the supernal world. The festival discloses the spiritual content of this world and elevate nature's yearly cycle. Pesach takes place during a season of new beginnings and renewal. Therefore, it is at this time that we left Egypt and became a nation. Shavuot takes place during a season when a process of growth has peaked. Therefore, it is at this time that we receive the Torah. Sukkot takes place during a season of summation when we benefit the privilege of living our lives in the shelter of God's providence. The holy day of Shavuot is also the day in which the fruits of the tree are judged, because the first of the fruits start to ripen at about this time. Various fruits continue to ripen over the course of the summer, up until around Sukkot and Shavuot. God passes judgment on the crop of fruit and determines its quantity and quality. Thus we see that Shavuot is type of Rosh Hashanah for plant life, both fruits and grains. As we just explained, Shavuot is the judgment day for fruit. Grains, the staple food of humanity, finish growing them. Barley begins ripening around Pesach time, and other grains continue to ripen until Shavuot. When the wheat crop other when a wheat crop matures, according to Shavuot, is called the harvest festival.
Okay, stop for a second. So you see that we're not farmers, most of us. Anybody here have a farm? Anybody grow vegetables?
Well, I was at some point.
Yeah, I have some in my garden now. I'm going to go soon to the nursery and buy some tomato plants, cherry tomatoes, and all sorts of fun things to have in my garden. But we're not, we don't live by it. You know, when I want to buy my vegetables and fruit, I go to the store. Just wrap it in a plastic bag. So we're kind of removed from the agricultural cycle. But there are two major types of produce. Grains, which we grind into flour and make breads from, and fruits. Vegetables is a third type. Vegetables, they go throughout the year. Various vegetables grow better in the summer, better in the winter, but they have a short cycle. Within a few weeks from seed to, you can go to having a nice vegetable. And then you uproot the plant and or it dies off, and then you plant another vegetable. So that you can have many, many cycles. That's why we always have vegetables. There's no season for cucumbers. It's all year long. Cucumbers, tomatoes, you can grow them all year long. They grow a little better in the summer because they get more sun, but you can grow them all year long. And so vegetables don't really have a season of the year. What has a season is the grain and the fruit that grow on trees. Most trees blossom in the spring and bear fruits over the summer, and most grains, they're sown, planted, beginning of the winter. All entire winter they're growing in the ground and coming up, and they come to ripen around the springtime, Pesach and Shavuot. So we have, for all intents and purposes, two types of harvests: the harvest of the grains, and then the harvest of the fruits. So he says that Shavuot, it's sort of the end of the harvest of the grains. Right? We talked about the barley first, and then the wheat is the last of the grains to ripen. And so Shavuot is Chag HaKatzir. But at the same time, Chag HaKatzir, it's the harvest, the end of the harvest of the grains, but it's the beginning of the season of the harvest of the fruits. Most of the fruits ripen during the summer, a little bit later. So it's called Chag HaBikurim because it's the beginning of the season of the first fruits. And that's why he says, we're worried, how are the fruits going to come out? And there's an element of judgment to Shavuot. Just like there's an element of judgment on Rosh Hashanah about and Sukkot, about the rainy season. We're going to have rains before right, that's the time of the planting of the grain. And we're worried how it's going to come out. So too the fruits. We want to make sure that we have a good crop of fruits. And so that's why it's explained that Shavuot is a time of a judgment day for fruits. Okay? A question? Someone had a question. Yes, Shmuel.
Well, it says here that Sukkot is gathering.
Yeah, gathering of the
Results
fruits.
of your work from the field.
Yeah, that's the result. It's the end of the gathering process, which primarily for the fruits. The fruits. Yeah, the end of the summer, all the fruits have been gathered, stored up. You make your preserves for the winter, and for those fruit which are not going to last if they're still fresh. You wanted to say something, please? Yeah.
Mushrooms, which category is it? Vegetables?
It's a good question. What's the bracha when you eat mushrooms? Shakol. It's so strange because it's actually botanically true. It grows from the air. You can have mushrooms attach itself to a rock. There's no earth. You can't say borei pri ha'adama, fruit of the land. Mushrooms don't grow from the land. And so therefore the bracha on mushrooms is shahakol nihiyeh bidvaro. Like eggs and fish. Yeah. Okay, so now there's an interesting little twist here. Ezra ordained. Shmuel, you want to read for us?
Okay. Ezra ordained that we read the curses at the end of Vayikra, just before Shavuot, and the curses at the end of Devarim, just before Rosh Hashanah, as an expression of hope. The current year's curses have come to an end, leading people to repent in hopes of assuring a blessed new year. Megillah 31b.
Yep.
Nowadays, though, in the practice, the curses are usually read 2 weeks before Shavuot and 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, because we do not want to place these curses in such close proximity to the festivals.
So when did we read the curses in the Parsha? Last week's Parsha, right? Bechukotai. We read the Parsha full of curses. We're done with that. We're finished with the curses. We're starting the new year. Shavuot, in this way, is like a turning of the corner to a new beginning. We should have only blessings. Okay, go ahead. On the Harvest Festival.
On the Harvest Festival, farmers harvest the fruits of their labor. They finish harvesting the grain and begin picking the fruit. Similarly, from a spiritual perspective, on Shavuot, the Jewish people harvested the fruits of their ancestors' labor and were privileged to receive the Torah. Two processes were brought to completion on Shavuot with the giving of Torah. First, the lengthy process that began when our ancestors started to follow God's ways, and which continued with the self-sacrifice of generations enslaved in Egypt. Second, the surer process of spiritual growth during spiritual honor.
Right, so in many ways, Shavuot is a completion of a process which we started at Pesach, both with the grain, harvesting of the grain, and developing ourselves from animalistic level to the spiritual level of being ready to receive the Torah. Sounds good? Sounds good? Zat Hashem will continue next time with the other names that we have not yet discussed more in greater detail, the Chag HaBikurim and Atzeret. And then we have to talk more about how we celebrate Shavuot in terms of the customs and staying up all night, eating dairy foods, where does that come from? All that's coming up in the rest of chapter 13. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Tomorrow you'll have a new and improved test on the dates of the Jewish holidays.